Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Mentality Mondays, a healthy masculinity conversation series, a part of the Mentality Project. My name is Anthony Siliberto, and I'm one of the co-leads on the project, as I also serve as one of the assistant directors for fraternity and sorority programs here at Tulane. And today we are super excited to have Jacob Goldberg and Dr. Julius Austin as our special guests. I also have my other co-lead and fantastic colleague, Chelsea Hill, who will introduce themselves and get our conversation started.
Hey everyone, welcome back again. I'm Chelsea Hill. I use she and they pronouns, one of the health promotion specialists here at the Well for Health Promotion, specializing in sexual health, sexual violence, and men's engagement initiatives. And as Anthony was saying, I'm very excited to have Dr. Julius back with us and Jacob for the first time on this conversation. So without further ado, I would love for both of you guys to give us a brief introduction. Just, of course, tell us about your position here at Tulane, where your specialty lies, and why you do the work that you do.
I can lead that off, Dr. J. You know,
go ahead. Man.
You got a lot more things to say than I do. So,
I don't know about all that.
Grateful to be here. My name is Jacob Goldberg. I am the Tulane Recovery Community Manager. It's a relatively new initiative, but the primary focus is for students that identify that they are in recovery from a relationship with substances, or maybe they're possibly seeking recovery resources on campus. Do a lot of different things in that capacity, but the office is still growing. And so again, we might get into it here, but it's a somewhat of a new field in academia. But the gist of it is to give support to students in recovery and provide services, get them connected, and allow them to maybe network with other folks on campus. So yeah, Dr. J, you're up.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. Julius Austin. I'm a clinical therapist in the Counseling Center, and I'm also the coordinator of the Office of Substance Abuse and Recovery, which is also fairly new here on campus. I play a multitude of roles. I'm a clinician in the Counseling Center, so I see patients, within the Counseling Center who come with a myriad of different things. But within the Office of Substance Abuse and Recovery, it's more substance, misuse and students' relationship with substances that I'm pretty much focused on. The students that come to me are typically students who have a history, with substance misuse. So we do a lot from a clinical perspective to explore their relationship with substances. So yeah, that's kind of what I do here. And like Jacob said, the office is evolving. It seems like by the day.
Julius and I work collaboratively in a lot of ways, and he is, his office is more on a focus of like the clinical space of he's a clinical provider, providing psychotherapy or assessments or and support and resources for individuals, and you have that autonomy in that office. My background, I didn't say this, but my background, I hold 3 different licensures myself. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed addictions counselor, and a certified clinical supervisor. So I have all this clinical background, and my background has been in primarily addiction treatment work prior to coming to Tulane. But I'm not providing clinical therapy per se for students. I can have relationships with students. We go grab coffee. We can grab something to eat. I can do activities with students. In your traditional psychotherapy setting, you don't do that with your patients or the folks that you work with. So my role is a little blended and a little different. If someone needs some services that maybe I'm working with, would refer to Dr. J's office and vice versa. Like I'm more of like a social and more integrative, like holistic support. And Julius, although can provide all those things, is very adept at that. He is more the clinical piece of it on campus.
I think that's the beauty about our 2 offices in like the way that they bounce off each other. So and also the fact that we both have these experiences. So Jacob, even though he's not acting in a role as a clinician, I can talk to him in that clinical, from that clinical perspective, and he understands what I'm saying, and because, even though I function as a clinician, I have a background, in a lot of stuff, so I can talk to him on a more of like the social and holistic way of like looking at students, and we both can kind of work off of each other, and sometimes either see the same student, or I see a student and I refer that student to him. So it works pretty good like that. Or at least we're trying to make it work that well like that.
Work in progress, right?
Sounds like it's working. Great work, guys.
Yeah.
Very cool. Can you dive a little further into kind of the work that y'all are doing collaboratively and talk about any kind of initiatives you work on, or how you support one another's work? Like, besides the referral process, are there any other projects that you two are doing together to support the work of OSAR and the recovery community?
I don't know if we have anything specific other than our like kind of the collaboration. I think there's definitely like a piece, and as well, COVID and this whole pivot for everybody and switching to virtual, and everybody's lives have impacted. I think it's given me an opportunity at least to kind of look and see what's working or what the shift is going to be. I'm very new to higher education. I've worked in LSU student mental health center when I was in graduate school, but again, the little idiosyncrasies of being in an institution like Tulane is very, very different than being in a private practice setting or just a clinical setting. And so, how our offices work together, or like how we can maybe do some outreach and some support. And it's different. And and Anthony, this, Chelsea, I think you do as well, is that you probably experienced it. It's something different especially when we're talking about like addiction, or we're talking about substance use, or alcohol and other drugs, and like how to do outreach and like connect with folks who need to hear what we have to say, right? That is like, how do you do that? How do you actually operationalize that? Because I think that's the big key piece. And like, I would like ask you guys, for the mentality project, for this stuff, like, who's your target audience? I have an assumption of that, but like, who is you guys' target audience? Probably folks that need to hear, I would assume at least, folks that need to hear about more than what the stereotypical idea of what if we're talking about masculinity, or what unhealthy masculinity looks like, or I know we're not using toxic masculinity as a word as much anymore, but like what those are the folks that we want to target, right? You're trying to stop that and try to like maybe like help some folks, I would assume. And how do we get to those folks, right? You guys got any secrets?
Connection. Connection. I would say I really like the points that you're bringing up, and I think this is where the mentality project has been going, but also where I see like from as a public health professional, how I want my work to go is more of a social emotional learning, but just that connectedness piece of how can we be more authentic with each other, vulnerable, speak to our experiences, because that's the stuff that sticks, not the research, not, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. So I think what you guys are doing, Jacob, what you're doing, being able to personally speak with the student and make that connection and say, hey, I'm just as human as you. I've been through this. You can heal. You can be better. I think that right there is more of an impact than let's just run a curriculum and this is what you need to learn. So I don't believe it.
Yeah,
it's about modeling, right? I think that's a big piece. I'm sure Dr. J could talk a lot about that. But like for me, at least, like where I have like had the most growth has been through like modeling people that like are, if we're talking about men, we're talking about a masculinity, men who embody something different than maybe that's not such like so like that is the norm for my process, or maybe I'm trying to like switch up a little bit, or realize that my behavior or something that's working with me is not really jiving, and it's not giving me the results that I want, because I'm a real results oriented person. At least I've gotten to that place in my life today. So it wasn't always there for sure, but trying to optimize. And so like, Dr. Julius seems to be doing well over here. What's he doing right? You know,
Yeah.
and like, what's Chelsea doing right? Like, what can I do? I'm not really an innovator. I'm more of an optimizer. So that's how I've, you know, I think that's how I've developed, at least in that space. And there's still a lot to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think also with mentality, we have shifted, you know, what the original target population was supposed to be from this program to, you know, giving different perspective on what masculinity looks like and holds masculine identities. It's not just male identified individuals.
Right.
And we have to be aware of that and how actions and behavior and emotions affect us all. I think that's really what Chelsea and I have been able to cultivate in this odd time of the pandemic, is providing students, faculty, and staff with different perspectives of what it looks like. Being able to have the conversations, and it's not just black and white. It's very gray, and it's important to talk about people's interpretations of what this means. So yeah, and also definitely we're trying to garner in on the social connectedness part and not just build like, here's a strict curriculum that you have to adhere to. And this week we're going to do this, this, and this. And if we don't get to that, like, it's not a class, right? We don't want it to be a class. We want it to be a conversation.
Yeah, I think, you know, just kind of listening to what, you know, what y'all are saying, a big piece of me and Jacob's, I guess, existence here on campus, at least from my perspective, has been like almost procedural in the way that, you know, our offices are new. Like, they're not just like new, like, so, like, you know, they're new. Like they don't have any, there's no protocol. Like there's no like rules. There's no, there's no like, you know, standard way of doing things here on this campus, you know? So a lot of it is like going out and seeing like, hey, what, like kind of like, you know, what Jacob was saying, optimizing, you know, what the world kind of gives you. Like, what are they doing over there on this campus? And like, how does that fit for us over here? You know, so like, you know, I remember when my office used to be next door to Jacob's, kind of popping over into his office. You know, you remember those days where we could just like be face to face and talking to each other? You know, pop over there, just say things like,
I miss you, man. I miss you a lot.
I know, right? It's so weird. I feel like I'm like, this is a long distance relationship. I'm on the other side of campus.
Loving this bromance.
Oh yeah, I got engaged this year, and I was like, I got to text Julius.
Yeah, yeah, because we were talking.
I don't know if he wanted to text me, but you know.
No, man, we were talking about the whole
ego
process. But you know, that's funny though, right? Because that's kind of what when you're placed at a university, especially like Tulane, and you're tasked with kind of creating an office, it's this weird sense of like floating where you don't, you know, it's like, oh, you know, you don't really know what people want from you, but you kind of have a loose ideal. You know, you don't really know the direction, but like you kind of have an idea of like the destination, you know? So a lot of the times you meet and you talk about possible collaborations, and then what happens is that forms into like, you got any kids? You got like, are you seeing some, like, are you seeing, like, how are you doing? Like, where your parents from? Where are you from? Like things like that, right? And it just builds this sense of community, which is a modeling effect in the sense of like modeling that process of getting to know people at a deeper level outside of just, you know, what do you do here on campus? What's your job title and how can I use you? You know? Right.
It's a parallel process. And I think one of, at least, I'm sure Julius gets this a lot, but like I was attracted to Julius, not in the sense that like we were close proximity, right, to one another, but here's another male in my field of, which is mental health and addiction treatment and therapy. And like, you know, my assumptions, which some of them are probably wrong, but my, initial assumptions of getting to know Julius, at least professionally and a little bit personally, is that we have some shared identities, shared experiences, or some shared worldviews. Some different ones as well too, obviously. He's got some awesome long hair, and I just have this bald head, but I've been growing this beard to kind of assert my masculinity in this conversation today. So I hope everybody's feeling it. But, But like we, and for me at least, is it, and it may be a different experience for Dr. J, but for like, my formative experiences in mental health and in school and in therapy, I was like in the classrooms and in the clinical rotations and things like that. I was kind of a minority in the sense that, first being like a white cisgendered male, I was really the minority. I could say that like there wasn't anybody like with those identities, which is great for like, it stretched me in a lot of different ways. And I don't like hanging around with people like this that are exactly carbon copies of myself. But it also like there's something, it just like when I think, Julius and I connected and just that we're both from Louisiana.
Yep.
He's a professional athlete. I wanted to be a professional athlete, and I still do. He's
There's still time.
He's super nice, and I'm just all over the place. So he's probably like, all right, just talking to me like.
No, man, there's still time.
What I'm saying, and
you still have 4 years of college eligibility left. Like you still got time.
Yeah, I still have some time. So, it's just different. And like, so I've had mentors in throughout my development as a clinician as well too, that were with different identities, but then I also had experiences of working with a lot of all male groups. And then I've had a lot of experiences working with all female identified groups too. And so like that whole process has been like, it's really been, it's shaped who I am in a lot of different ways. And I think I've become a better person because of it too, which was never my really intention getting into this space,
I think that's a great segue. We're definitely going to come back and ask you both to plug resources and your information on how we can keep up to date with you and just get in contact with you. But I wanted to just get a little bit more personal and just ask if you could speak to, why you do the work that you currently do right now and your journey to what drove you to do it. And if masculinity does fit into that somehow, awesome. But if not, we're totally, of course, going to get into masculinity in a bit.
I'll jump in real quick. I think on a personal level, my dad was one of the reasons. Well, just the men in general in my family, but my dad even more specifically. So and there's levels to that, obviously, but I think getting into the field of just counseling in general, just being a psychotherapist, that's definitely my grandfather and my dad. They were just guys who were, I don't know if y'all can believe it, but even more laid back than me. And you're talking about somebody who got stuck on the elevator in the health center. And like I was just kind of hanging out there. But my dad's a little bit more laid back than me, and I had the opportunity to have him be a consistent, constant, piece and part of my life, and I was able to maybe because I didn't even know my babysitter was like construction sites, so I got the chance to like be on these construction sites with my dad and see how like he worked and stuff like that, but also how he communicated with like his crew of men who all had their own egos and all had the way that they wanted to do things. And, how my dad just kind of took this family business of doing concrete construction, took it from my grandfather, like led the same crew my grandfather led. And then, because those guys were, getting up there in age, transition out of that crew and give all these young men, within the community, opportunities to like learn a new skill. And some of them started their own crews, so just being able to silently watch him, navigate anger and frustration and heat and happiness and joy and the ups and downs of being a construction worker. That's definitely why I got into this field. Just the way that he just gave himself to these people, and he's still giving himself to these people. You know, how he, like, I saw him go behind these guys and like hold tools with them and show them how to manipulate the earth and concrete. Yeah, I mean, it's a weird and funny way of getting into this profession, but how helpful, how patient, how sometimes loud but kind and humorous he was. Yeah, those things. You know, running up those little sand dunes at my dad's job site and having to watch out for like iron things flying at our head was so worth it to be able to have that experience of watching him do his thing.
Thank you for sharing.
I have a vastly different experience. You know, yeah, my father provides a lot of things and has provided a lot of things for me, wonderful things. The skill of therapeutically communicating is, I don't think he would put that on his resume. You know, and so I could say that in some ways, just listening to Dr. Julius, I'm like, man, that's all, like, so, like, I think maybe some of me like crave that.
Yeah.
I didn't really know
Same.
it. I didn't really know it until much later in life, or
Yeah.
that was a piece of me that like a piece of my just world experience that like I could tap into. You know, I just don't think, I think some people have, like, I really believe that there's some limitations with some people and their capacity to be able to do certain things. I've seen it play out in the therapeutic setting a lot, and that's, you know, you can't, some people just need the skill building. They do a lot of skill building before you can be able to have the actual capacity to talk about some of the things that Julius was just talking about, like patience and tolerance and identifying feelings and seeing that process play out rather than just the content of it. So, you know, my dad is a really brilliant guy. He can do a lot of different things. He's amazing at fixing things. He's you know, he's an engineer by trade. You know, he could fix anything mechanically. You give him any kind of motor or something out, he'd figure it out. He can read plans, and he's semi-retired now. And what he does, like, he was an environmental engineer, and what he does now is he plays guitar as well. He plays blues guitar, and he's always played blues guitar. So I think that's a good expression. That's maybe an expression or an outlet rather than maybe the verbal feelings expression piece. Is but he got into restoring tube amplifiers. So there's like a whole niche subgroup of folks that really are into like tube amplification for, you know, for guitars and, you know, different musical instruments. And so he kind of like builds these things, and it's a very precision work. He knows how to like solder and understands circuitry and understands all these things. And so it fills up some of his time when he's not doing other little projects. And he definitely had to work with folks and work with people. But I think I don't know, I don't believe I saw him like leading like a group of people, you know, or like in the sense that maybe Dr. Julius is talking about with his father, with like everybody's going to this task. He was more of a consultant and also like really, really good at, like, his whole job was to like find where things were going to fail, right? Or find like what's wrong with those situations, you know? So his whole, like, and I think that really works really well with who he is finding, you know, finding out what's wrong and pointing out the wrong and trying to fix those things. You know, that's a lot of engineering work is done. So like, how did I find this space, right? You know, if that was some of my formative experiences, is I think I've always been psychologically minded in some ways. I just didn't have the verbiage to be able to recognize that. I think now that you say that, what my dad and I used to listen to. It was a radio show. It was like a talk therapy radio show. Dr. Laura Lessinger, I think was her name. I don't know if you guys know that name, but it was like a, you know, I don't know. It was like a pop site, kind of like national syndicated radio
Yeah.
show where people call in for their problems, and and Dr. Lessinger would, and I don't even know what kind of Dr. Lessinger was, but it could be not even a clinician in the traditional sense, but that was maybe my first introduction. I also went to therapy myself, not because I wanted to, but because I was told to. I needed to go when my parents divorced when I was about 8 years old. So that was my first introduction to therapy. Definitely wasn't planning on being a therapist or working in the field. I wanted to be a basketball player, and I still do want to be a basketball player. But, fast forward through getting into 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, I was really making some really poor choices, and my lifestyle had fallen into a space that it really didn't have a really great trajectory, and which resulted in me having the privilege and the ability to be able to go to a treatment facility, like a substance use treatment facility. And that was my introduction to really having my eyes open to what are the benefits of talking about these things, and then my assumption about who goes to therapy was smashed, or what could be the results of staying in these spaces, because I was and for me, this is just because I have poor insight and judgment. I needed people who looked like me, who spoke the same language as me, and did that stuff, that were this typical kind of athlete, bro-y, whatever assumption you want, whatever label you want to put on there, was going into these spaces and then starting to talk about their feelings or talk about these concepts around family of origin issues and trauma and stuff like that. And then I started to experience some own relief in myself, and change some behaviors and some thoughts and actions behind that. And that kind of led to finding some mentors in the field that were like, hey, you could do this if you wanted to. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, and I really didn't. I remember I went back to school, so I failed out of college because I wasn't going to class. I was again, I don't know how much I can be explicit, how explicit I can be on this podcast to what you got going on, but let's just say I was doing some illegal activities, and that resulted, and I wasn't very good at it, and that resulted in some consequences. So, I didn't have it. I was going to be an engineer. I was going to be go into construction. That was something that I had focused in. And then I had this life experience. I went through this treatment program. One of the counselors called me up and was like, hey, you want to come? I was going back to school at that time at a community college. And they were like, hey, you want to come over and work at the treatment facility? And I was like, work at the treatment facility? I was like, yeah, I need some money, I'll go work at the treatment facility. And so I was working as a behavioral health, mental health tech. And then they said, oh, well, we think you'd be kind of good at the counseling thing if you're interested. And I'm like, really? And they, and so at 22 years old, I got my first credential for in terms of addiction counseling. It was just a CIT, a counselor in training. So I had started supervision, started watching. I had a mentor that was really, really valuable to me. He holds the same credentials that I hold now, and that's really kind of what led me down the path. I really liked, the way, the things that he embodied. He was kind, he was patient. He seemed happy, and and they had made a career out of providing therapy for folks. And so I got to sit down, and I was really, I look back at it now, I didn't realize how awesome it was, but I got to sit down and observe, and he would say co-facilitate, but I was just a process observer of a therapy. It was a trauma therapy group for a year. And I really got to see some really tough things, but also like see some things like, see kind of the magic of therapy, to put it like simplistically. That just like I just kept pursuing, or like just like putting one step in front of the other. And doors just started opening for me, and kind of just went down on the path. It was never like, this is where I'm going to be, or this is what I'm going to do. Kind of fell into the space,
Yeah, your path wasn't linear. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful journey.
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing.
I appreciate y'all sharing all of that. I think it gives both Chelsea and I, because we both work with you, both in the same spaces and on different projects, some more insight to how you got to where you are.
I could talk more. I don't want to take up too much space, but I could say this is that like, it's very like, so higher education is different for me in the sense, like in all the settings that I've worked in previously, there are folks that have shared experiences myself, or they may not have the shared experience, but they have some of the clinical training as myself too. And it's been a focus. So like, again, like I from 22 up until 32, my primarily focus was I was in addiction treatment facilities. I'm talking about detox facilities, long-term, all-male programs, professional programs where, I'm leading therapy groups where everybody in the group is a physician, or everybody in the group is an attorney, and so that, I never thought I'd be in a space like that, and it definitely it gave me a lot of opportunity for growth, and whatever ego complex I had was definitely smashed as well too. So, but yeah, so this is different in that, I'm pretty open about my recovery identity, and that's kind of like I think folks that work in collegiate recovery, there's a lot of folks that aren't in, don't hold that identity, and that's fine. And I never really saw myself as like an advocate, or like someone that would be creating the space that I'm currently in right now. But I've got a lot of learning to do, but I feel like it's one of those things you hear if you participate in any of these recovery support meetings. It's like your greatest liability turns into your greatest asset, and that's kind of what's opened up for me. And like I kind of crave the stuff that Julius is talking about, like what he gets to do with like have the clinical experience with folks, because that's something that's that's the really thing that got me into the space to begin with. And so outside of the work I do at Tulane, I still hold, like I do some executive coaching, recovery coaching, and private psychotherapy. Very, very small practice, and I've been doing like interventions and with families throughout since I've been licensed to be able to do it. So like I still have like a little piece where I can get some of that, hey, let's get into the therapy thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know, like for me, working on different projects with y'all, like I still have a lot to learn as a young professional in higher ed, and like I've reached out to y'all like several times this week to work on projects. So definitely appreciate the knowledge that you share with colleagues too.
Information is changing, right, Dr. J? Everything's changing. The verbiage is changing. The best practices is changing. The space that we both work in is surprisingly a novel field. It's a very novel field, although it's been around since the mammalian brain was in its formation, was able to process dopamine. So it's been around. So, but we're just now beginning to start to talk about it, which is great. Yeah, it's good.
Diving into some more masculinity specific questions, we're just wondering, like, what does masculinity mean to each of you, and how does that intersect with the work that you do both at Tulane and maybe privately as well, in terms of healthy masculinity, unhealthy masculinity, violence prevention, things like that?
Julius, you answered this one before, or
I did, because I remember in the last one, but it's weird. What's weird, because we were just talking about information changing, And I think throughout several iterations of my experiences through life, depending on what's going on, my ideal of masculinity shifts, so like, I think I'm, I had my first kid, which was, a son, and my ideal of masculinity was one way. Then I had a daughter, and my ideal of masculinity, shifted, changed. I think a lot of the times it is kind of a back and forth process of me, taking my experiences that I've had with my grandparents, with both my parents, they didn't have traditional roles, within the household. Like, my mom and my dad both ran their own businesses, kind of separate, but like together. So, daycare for us was going to job sites or doing flooring and stuff like that. So, my ideal of masculinity can be summed up by like a series of words, I guess, and those words are like tenets, handed down to me. So, respect is one, respect for others, but also respect for yourself. And I think something that's coming into play now is awareness. So awareness, my mom had this phrase of, she said, remember you're always loved, and think before you speak. And I think those things really still play a role. Remember, I'm always loved. It means that, it doesn't really matter what I do out in like the world. I can always go home. Like my parents are always going to be there. My parents have been married for 40 years, I want to say. So they're always going to be there. But the awareness piece is, having the awareness to know how I'm affecting other people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm 34, and, I'm kind of early on in my career. I just graduated with my doctorate in 2016. It feels like it's far away, but it's really close. So in the big scheme of things, people here on this campus have been in higher ed for 20, 30 years, and I've been here for a hot second, so like, I think as I matriculate through this, these experiences, being aware of who I am and being aware of how I affect other people is something that's like pivotal to my definition of masculinity. I think it's like a responsibility for me to at all times be aware of like how I affect people and what, what I'm saying or what I'm doing, or even like my space, between other people, influences the way that they think and feel. I never want to be callous about that. So I guess that's how I would define masculinity, being aware of the way that you affect other people on multiple fronts.
Pretty profound and very articulate, precise.
Jacob's going to come out with, if you could squat over 360. Then
that's right. I was just about to ask you, what's your squat? What's your bench press? It's probably more than mine, but
oh no, man.
How's your mobility, Dr. J?
Hey, there we go. I sweat when I try to touch my toes. So that's telling you something.
I think now's a good time to plug him, because I don't know if he's going to plug himself here, but like I found out this week that Dr. Julius right here is the keynote speaker for the American Counseling Association National Conference, which is a very large conference. He's one of the keynote speakers. And, this might not mean anything to you guys, but it's pretty significant for me. One of the other keynote speakers is Dr. Urban Yalom, who is like the king of existentialism. He's, there will be statues of Dr. Yalom. He's written over, I don't know, like 30 publications, 30 books. I've got a book, like a really big book of his that everybody uses.
The group book.
It's in there. And this guy, he's, where is he? Is he at Stanford?
I think so, yeah.
Emeritus professor at Stanford. But anyway, you guys look up Dr. Urban Yalom, and we got a Dr. Julius Austin that's going to be sharing the stage with him. this
That's
year.
dope.
So Julius, I want a free like can I get into the conference? You know, do you have any
Yeah, I
contacts
see.
that you're
No, yeah, I know people. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm in
Yeah,
close
I'm always-
contact.
Front row seats.
you know, I think humility is a big piece of masculinity that
Yes.
probably that should be a noteworthy attribute that I don't know if that's a mainstream conception, right? When I think of masculinity, it's not, I don't think the first jump to for people is like, oh, you know, yeah, masculinity, or if we're talking about masculinity again, I'm thinking kind of in the context of like the societal construct of a male identified person, or you know that like what are the you know, what are the attributes of that? And like some of them could be, you know, stereotypical attributes, or what we do in this Western society and what we do in America and what we assume about male identified folks, right? Is that, I guess that's masculinity in some ways. And for me, Dr. J might not be this, you know, he's probably a little more enlightened than I am. Like when I was a kid, and still like early in my 20s too, like let's see, when I was a kid, like of course I looked up to my dad, and I had like people that I looked up to, like that were around me, but I looked up to like athletes and like people and like movie stars, and like, you know, I was looking up, you know, I'm from Baton Rouge originally. Again, I think I've said this a couple times. I wanted to play basketball, you know, so I had like these videotapes that shows you how old I am of Pete Maravich, Pistol Pete Maravich, and there's you know there's the basketball arena at LSU is named after him. There's big he's phenomenal historical basketball player. Looked up to him, looked up to Shaq. Shaq went to LSU, you know, of course, Michael Jordan. You know, I could name a bunch of athletes. And what did all these athletes that I like as a child, or what I like assumed they were all big, like muscular guys, you know, they were like tough and strong, and like they were like assassins like at their craft, you know, and that was like I think, you know, you didn't get to see the whole picture of folks as much as you do now. And I think still we're very, you know, curated a lot of times in like how we present to the world, and how like social media, but like there's, you know, I think some of the veil has started to be lifted a little bit for these idols that we like look up to. And you know, but like I didn't have that veil lifted, and I don't know if I had the capacity to like to understand that there was, you know, Shaq wasn't perfect all the time, you know. So like I didn't understand that, but like I was like, oh, that's what I got to be, as like, because I want to be like him. I want my own shoe named after me. So like I am going to try to be perfect. I'm going to try to be strong. I'm not going to show weakness. I'm going to try to order people around. I'm going to take up space, you know, and I'm going to do everything right. And so this idea of like perfectionism, or always knowing what to do, I think just like Dr. Julius, my perception has changed in my growth and maturity, in life experiences, and had more ability to be able to understand and talk about it too. I don't think there's necessarily anything inherently wrong with me to like looking up to these folks, or like wanting to be like them. I think what the piece that like I think that we could do better at, and I think we are doing, I think we're trending better, like generally better, is like to understand that like people are fallible, and like that there is this like, you know, and it's okay, and you're going to be, and you got to embrace some of that stuff, and learn some other skills too, you know. So like I played musical instruments most of my life, and I started playing piano, like classically trained piano, when I was 5-6 years old, and I can remember a time, I think I might have been like, I don't know, 10 or 11, something around there. Maybe hormones were just about to start to like kick in. And I was like, piano, you know, that's not for wusses, right? You know, like piano is not like a manly thing. I think that's my first really like insight or judgment I had for like what I believe, like, and where did I get that from? I don't know. I think a lot of it, you know, nature, nurture, society, I don't know, but like I liked piano, but then all of a sudden it was like, no, that's not cool because like piano's for girls. That was like my narrative at the time, you know? And so I stopped playing piano, and I picked up a different instrument that I thought was more manly, right? You know, so or cool, right? Because I've always wanted to fit in and be cool, and like I've tried all these different things to do it, and you know, finally realized that now I'm old, so I can't be cool, so it's all good, you know. But come to some acceptance, you know. That's
the first step.
But yeah, like you know, I don't know, like that really some of that, like the construct where I got it from, I don't know, it really shaped a lot of some of my early decision making. I would kind of wonder if I didn't have that, you know, or if I was exposed to something different, or if I thought differently earlier, what would be happening? Would I still be in the same space right now? Would I have different hobbies and interests? You know, I don't know, but again, I think I was fortunate that I had some folks in my life, my dad included, and then like some peers around me that were into different things, that were like, that had different interests. And my parents really encouraged that too. Like they were extremely encouraging of me like sports absolutely was a thing, but like learning and like reading and looking at art and being able to have some sort of discussion around that and have like some inspection of yourself and some what's going on, like that those things were for me, a lot of them were like already in place, where other people really have to seek that stuff out. And wouldn't it be nice if like we all kind of were given some of these like options or gifts like early on? And you know, I'm sure I don't have any kids. I don't know if I will have any kids, but like, you know, Dr. Julius, I can imagine like if I did ever have a child, like, you know, what a responsibility. Wow. You know, and like, you know, so much, I know too much now. So like, you know, you know, it's like, wow, that's a scary responsibility. And like, but also what a magical thing that you can do, and what you can, you know, how you can provide to help shape and guide to a degree, a young man, young woman, or a person for that, you know, in a holistic, helpful way. Because like I joke sometimes, I'm like, you know, I'm a Renaissance man. You know, I like to say that I'm a Renaissance man. I don't know if you guys know that term, but it's like, you know, a Renaissance man used to be like a guy that could do everything, right? A little bit of everything, right? And I can't do it by any means, but like I do like to have a little interest in a lot of different things. And you know, I there's some guys that I hang out with. I'm a big fisherman, and you can get into a lot of psychology around fishing. But you know, there's some guys that like they work in construction, or you're like they're not talking about feelings. They're not talking about, you know, I'm out there and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, you know, background clinical therapy, or you know, like I don't even give them that pitch anymore, because it doesn't even work. Like, doesn't work. Like some people just can't even, like, they're like, what?
Yeah.
What do you do? You know? And so I'm like, look, you know, like talk therapy, like counseling, you know, you're like, no, like physical therapy. I'm like, no, not physical therapy, you know. So I don't know. I didn't really define masculinity there, but this is a good story. Julius did it.
I think
job, you know?
You still gave your background. You still, I got a really good, at least understanding of your background and how you've experienced masculinity. So even though, sure, you didn't give us an exact, you know, pinpoint on how you feel about it, it's nice to see how it has shaped your life. And you also provided some tips, it seems like, and so did Dr. Julius as well. So I appreciate you for answering that. So just for time reasons, want to respect your guys' time. I'm just going to end the conversation with a couple more questions. Was wondering if you could just end by telling us how we can follow and stay up to date with the work that both the Counseling Center and OSAR is doing, and you, Jacob, as well. If you guys want to plug your socials or websites, anything,
Yeah.
feel free to do that now.
So I can start and working on getting a social media. So I would love to have a social media.
Are we all?
I think it would be really, really important. Well, just for the office to grow and just kind of denote it. Right now I'm part of the well. I'm embedded for the well, but I work for student affairs as a whole, like we all do. It's interesting in my and Dr. Julius' offices, we're sort of siloed in some ways, but we also have responsibilities to other folks, because it's an intersection of folks that deal with substance use, or and a lot of times, we didn't talk about this, but a lot of times people refer to us, and that's primarily the work that I've done for since I've gotten into the field, is it's not internal motivation for change. It's external motivation for change initially. And then sustained change usually gets to some internal motivation. I would say there's some outliers that initially walk into the office that are internally motivated, but it's oftentimes someone else is saying, you need to go talk to this guy. You need to go to this. You need to go to treatment. You have to go this, or this is going to happen, right? So, there's natural referrals that way, but to get a hold of us, and I have some wonderful students that I work with that have found me through their own volition, and family members too. It's pretty simple. You can go to Campus Health webpage and look for collegiate recovery, the Tulane recovery community. There's some information there. We should be doing some updates on the website soon. What we have going on for students right now is we have two groups that happen. Tuesdays is a more collaborative affair with the Southeastern Conference of other colleges in recovery. There's an all recovery meeting, which is a non-denominational recovery meeting. It's open to all students, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. And that's all virtually. And then Thursdays, 6 p.m. is for Tulane students. And we're actually open to Loyola students and other students in the New Orleans area at this point. But that is, we do a 6 p.m. just kind of like a fellowship group where we're talking. It's not a psychotherapy group by any means. There might be some process involved, but talking about what's going on in the here and now and connecting some other folks. A lot of times folks get on campus who do have that recovery identity, and they're like, who else is in recovery, or like who else is practicing this lifestyle. And it can be really difficult to find, or you think that like no one else is going to be there. So we really want to serve as a support to be able to get those people connected to some other folks that may share that identity and share their experience. And if they want to be involved, they can. So those are the two groups that we have. Again, no Instagram, no TikTok yet, but you can get on the website there. I'm super accessible. That's the piece right now, especially in this formative phase, is that my cell phone number is out there. It's on the web page. It's in my email. My email is on the web page as well. You can email me, call me. We have students that text me. I have family members that call, text, asking about resources on campus or what are some options. And I'll say this last plug, because I can just keep going on a tangent, and we'll let Dr. J go and plug his stuff. Is that there's some really exciting stuff happen with collegiate recovery at Tulane that the university has really gotten behind. The administration has really gotten behind this initiative and made a significant investment, not only in our offices and like hiring Dr. Julius and hiring myself and potentially more folks, is that they purchased a home off Calhoun Street. It's a really, really beautiful home, and it backs up right to campus. We're in the midst of I've been doing some fundraising and assisting with the Office of Advancement to be able to get this home renovated. And it's going to be it's like the nicest state-of-the-art facility for folks in recovery. So it's going to be a community center, a community center for recovery. We'll also have some recovery housing there. So we'll be able to have different types of programming there. And then also like have different kinds of support groups, because we didn't get into it today, but there's a lot of different, just in the world of recovery, there's a lot of different avenues, many pathways to recovery. And it's really cool with us at Tulane is we want to be inclusive of all those different pathways, and we want to provide it for folks. And there's so many, just because you're in recovery doesn't mean you need to be going to this group, and there's allowed to be some subgrouping there. So having some gender specific groups, having some we could talk about marginalized groups in recovery, and then just having different pathways where the AA is not the only way for recovery. There's other proven supportive pathways, and we want to provide those for folks. So there's a better spiel for me. I kind of I stumbled early on, but I'm getting better now. So I'll pass to Dr. Julius.
Jacob, I'm looking forward to seeing your TikTok.
Right.
Kind of videos you'll do on TikTok.
We're going to be recruiting you, Anthony. To help with that, So,
I'll start prepping ideas.
I'm too old for TikTok, but I could get some. I just need some younger.
Never too old.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're about to be very busy with that app.
Yeah.
No, but to get connected with me is pretty simple. Just you can go to the website, to the campus at the website, to the counseling center website. My email is there, or you can just call the counseling center. Just call the counseling center, and like usually if I'm not seeing somebody, I'm manning the phone, so I'll feel free to talk to anybody really about the work I do in the office, or even like the different resources we have on campus, because not everybody's a good fit for my office. So it's good to kind of get them on the phone or get them on the on the Zoom meeting and say like, all right, well, you're probably not a good fit, but there is this guy, Jacob, that may be a good fit for you, or maybe like, you should look into off-campus stuff. So yeah.
And I'm not a fit for everybody either, right? Neither of us are like perfection. I'm very, very aware of that too. So like, but my absolute goal is to find somebody that is, or find a space where somebody is a fit. And, I think I have a lot of resources within the New Orleans community and nationally in the recovery space that I promise you I find somebody that knows where the fit would be for folks looking for support, help, or growth in any of the topic areas we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate both of you so much. I'm sure that we'll be having a second follow-up conversation with y'all. We have a lot more questions to ask, and I think just from our conversation today, I have more to add to that list. So yeah, absolutely be on the lookout for another email from us. And we are so appreciative of you taking this time to chat with us. So thank you both again. And we look forward to the continued conversation.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
This is fun.
All right, y'all have a good day.
All right.